And tonight's show, we've got a banger coming up for you. We've got Nick Fuentes is arrested. We've got pardons to be had. Part of the problem, we have an issue with Tyler on part of the problem. And then maybe we'll get to SCOTUS transitioning right now.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder, for others, in other cases, whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you. You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. And I hope Mike is on. I hope just let me check a few things here. I just want to make sure. Okay, that's running. I think we're all up and running everywhere. And there we go. Hello. Let's gonna do something though. I'm gonna put. Let's see if we can get some other lights going on here. And then I have some drama to talk about, and then we'll get to the main events. We're gonna break down SCOTUS a bit. I did. There we go. I think we're all happy in here. Let's see, are people coming in the chat? I think so. Let's give everybody a little bit of hi, Butternut Squash. What's up? Tyler Yonke, LPR. Hope you enjoyed your times since last week. It's been a busy one. Let me give you. I know some people are like, get to the points. I want to hear. Well, I came here to watch you talk about Nick Fuentes getting arrested for battery, or Nick someone else. Maybe. Hey, Adam Choi. Hey, Adam, you can chime in here because you were, I believe. I know you're part of the inner circle, Dave Smith. I'm going to play a clip. I posted a question to Dave Smith's show the other day, and Robbie the Fire went girly on it. And that's all I'm going to have to say. Now, did I pose the question quite as I meant to? Not quite. Okay. And we'll talk about that. We're going to play the clip. Okay. But let me just back up here. I'm not going to get to the point right away. My wife and I, we had our anniversary Saturday. So we were going to go to Morro Bay. It's down by Paso Robles. It's about 5 hours. It took longer than that to get down there. South Central California. Okay. So, not too far from Pismo Beach, that kind of stuff. Anyway, point is we're going down there. And we're going to leave in the morning. Kids are home. We got adult kids or whatever. They were home for Thanksgiving. And someone was doing laundry. And there was a little bit of moisture down there. I'm like, what the heck? I look on the back. This washer's like 11 years old. And I look on the back. There's no leaking, but there's the bin's full of water. And then there's a little bit of water on the floor. So I'm like, maybe it overflew. So we just overflowed. So kind of did some things, whatever, jiggled it around and then pushed it again. Like 5 minutes, my wife is like, what the? And this whole flooring was flooding everywhere. Now, I had just redone our house with flooring, like put subfloor in and then vinyl lock and click and lock, whatever, flooring. It's really nice, this nice floor. And the problem is you have to have like 1/4 inch space on the sides. Then you have your baseboards go over it because it floats, which means water can just go underneath this flooring. So I mean, and basically what happened is this washer broke on the bottom and it just all leaked out the bottom. So it was just, I had the shop vac out. We're sucking this stuff up. Then we had this thing planned. So we drive down there, we come back, we tried to air it out, whatever. Come back and the floorboards are weird, baseboards. So I pop it off. There's like mold in there already. And I was already thinking this was going to be a problem. So I'm getting a dehumidifier. I'm ripping up the flooring, trying to say it's a problem. We had to order. And I'm like, hey, honey, happy anniversary. How about a new washer and dryer? There you go. Oh, that was you. Haha. Yes, it was. How do you defend? How do I defend what? I was paying half attention. How do I defend? Maybe you're talking about the thing with Dave Smith. I'll talk about it. I think it was a good question. We talked about it on the post show, the Penthouse of Tower Gang. I think it was fine with my question. I remember when I was posting in there, I'm like, I don't want Dave to have to, and we'll get to it. I didn't maybe quite write it as I wanted to, but Robbie flipped the fuck out, and I don't even understand that. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's actually an indefensible position that he and David, and you're like, what is it? We'll get to it. It was the question about hiring Cuomo. Yes, it was. It was about PDB, and I've been wanting to ask Dave that for a while, and it was a bit of a troll. But I actually thought at one point when Dave I'm like, is he defending my position? Anyway, I was laughing. I was so, by the way, I know some people, the internet's a weird thing, right? Which is you guys are, for the most part, nice people in here, but every once in a while you get someone who's not, and it can be somewhat abrasive, or you get a tweet that's, really pushing back or comments that are really hateful. And you're like, but I mean, I'm also like, I deal with this stuff as my job all the time. And you're just like, you mean being married to my, no, it's, that's a much different kind of hate. No, you deal with stuff all the time, and it's like, you don't take it personal, but what you do try to do from there is learn how to argue better. And so I hope I will get that. But we will talk about that. Are we going to talk about that first? Maybe. What I do want to, because here's what this is what I had planned. I was going to talk about the Biden pardon. And then I was like, we can throw into that with that, Nick Rekieta. Is he going to be pardoned? Okay, so you guys know, we'll talk a little legal stuff. Federal crimes could only be pardoned by the president, El Presidente. State crimes could be pardoned, commuted sentences or whatnot by the governors of the states. So I think the governors should come out and pardon Trump on his crimes alleged that they've had with the state side. That's perfectly fine. Remember the civil issue with the sexual assault. That wasn't a criminal thing. That was civil. They took that on a civil side. But it always cracks me up. They're like 35 indictments. It's like it's 35 separate ledger entries. As an example, we do this when you file a contempt of court in family law. It's quasi-criminal and civil, so they actually arraign the person. You can have, penalties, can be, criminal or civil penalties. Let's say someone isn't paying spousal support. Do these, several times. Someone's not paying spousal support. So spousal support is due on the first of the month. I had one last year where, he was supposed to pay, and he paid up through March, and then he stopped paying April through, 12 months, basically a year. We were set for trial, and it was getting pushed back, so this was all part of that. So when you file that, you do counts, different counts, and multiple, certain amount of counts will then trigger a jury trial, as an example. Otherwise, it's a bench trial. Each missed payment is an additional count, okay? Of contempt. And so you can understand where Trump's on this thing, 35 different things. It was literally, I believe, 35 different ledger entries that they had each count for it as a separate felony or double. So it's a little bit, oh, wow, what a mass felony. Pardon him. Who's going to pardon Nick Rekieta? It's going to have to be the governor. Sorry to tell you, it's going to have to be the governor, and I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, we should throw this up here because I want it. Some shows it's hard to interact with the chat a bunch. Last time was that, and this one maybe we'll get to. Yeah, Robbie flipped out. He talked more about that question than he's ever talked in the history. Right, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't always talk. That was so funny that you triggered them. It was crazy. Robbie's reaction was like that shifted to Joe Behar on The View, says Hubbleson. And Hubbleson, thanks for all the comments. Robbie the yammering woman, Bernstein. I like Robbie, not a problem. It kind of just took me back why he was freaking out so much. And maybe it's the way he was, you know what it was? This is going to be bad. I hope Rob watches this. I wanted him on the show because I wanted to do a whole podcast about part of the problem. And I wanted him to come on to talk about the history of him coming on. Me too, but that's funny. I don't care. I do like Robbie, but I will say this. It was a weird reaction, and we'll get to it. I know I'm hyping up the crowd here. And it reminded me kind of like, this is going to sound horrible. But he's the big dog is Dave Smith, okay? And someone's picking on Dave. Dave doesn't really care so much, but Robbie's offended for his friend, and because his friend is the big dog. And so now and it was so posturing. It was really, really odd. I wasn't picking a fight with either one, but we will get to all this fun and games. Okay, so Biden, Nick, part of the problem, transitioning at SCOTUS. I will go over that because I want to talk a little bit about the case. We'll play some of those clips as well. and then I've got to go down and rip more flooring out. And if you don't know much about we'll lead you into that. So the pardon, it's weird. Presidents do this all the time, right? So they're always pardoning someone or commuting their sentences. You know, they usually do it at the end of their term. And then people, I remember Frank Rich or someone like that was someone that Clinton had pardoned. It was a big deal because he was a big scumbag. You know, there's always someone that happens, and then the other side flips out about it. But it's your right to basically to do this. And I don't have problems with him doing it. Remember, Trump said on multiple podcasts that he would pardon Hunter Biden. And I wish that Biden had allowed that to happen. But the problem was, and I think everyone understands this now, you know, it's fine to criticize that, but it's also their right to do it. But it was the way that he did the pardon, okay? The pardon was a blanket pardon, I think, for like everything for the last 11 years. It was really odd. It's like, you know, if someone is saying, you know, for some reason they're real specific. Like I do this with Discovery. I want, you know, all your documents, bank statements, what have you, from, you know, January 1, 2023 through the current. There's a reason why I'm going back to that date, right? And much like this, there's a reason why he's going back 11 years. And I think this is really to hide the big guy, some of his crimes and stuff. So that'll be interesting. It won't inoculate you know, Trump's DOJ or whomever to go after Biden. You know, maybe, I don't know. Everyone gets a pardon. Yeah. What is this? Oprah? I called it a week ago. They would pardon Fauci. Interesting. Hey, Lincoln, how you doing? Fauci, really. I think Fauci is a great example, and I think we'll keep that in mind, a great example of the Cuomo situation when we get to there. Because would you be okay with the, you know, like your favorite right-wing libertarian, whatever publication, internet, whatever, hiring him? No, you guys would be all upset. No, this is a horrible person, the things he did. Okay. What about the guy that was his media spokesperson, in a sense, Cuomo? Would you hire him? And do you think that's a bad idea? That's kind of my question. And now I'm spoiling it, but we'll get to that. Okay, so that was my thing with, I do want to say this because I do have a note here. Here's what. I think the pardon on Biden is indicative of his parenting style. Some people were out there going like, I don't care what you say. That's his son. He would, you know, he's pardoning him. Okay, I guess if I had the power, maybe I would do that too. But I think it's that exact mentality from Joe Biden that put his son in this position because he has enabled him for years. He's literally pardoned him now, but he's given him pardons over the years. Right? He doesn't get in trouble. He gets all these, you know, gets money. He gets to go over to the Ukraine. He gets more money for the big guy. He's on coke. He's a horrible father. He's doing horrible paintings. People are buying him. He gets away with being that jock in high school that was raping chicks, the cheerleaders that no one liked, but he gets away with it because he's the best player at the school type of thing. That's what his life has been. He's been that privileged child, and his dad has never, I believe, given him the hard knocks, any school of hard knocks. This is the one time he has been given the hard knocks in his life, right? And with that, dad bails him out again. This behavior is exactly why Hunter Biden is in this situation, and it's maybe even why Nick Rekieta is in the same situation. So anyway, that's my take on that. Everyone gets a pardon. My comment got filtered out of YouTube. I can't believe that. I like the live chat on screen so I can notice that. Yeah, okay. I said it's funny how people are acting confused as to why Fauci would need a pardon. Yeah. Okay. He's doing literal shit pants now. Okay. It's true. He did paintings in his own shit. I don't know about his own shit, but he did some horrible paintings. I talked about Hunter Biden when his family law case came about. Someone sent me, I think it was a Spaces, and so I went in there and I was really going hard, giving him the lowdown of what the situation is with family law, and I garnered a bunch of mega followers, and then they get confused when I'm like, wait, I just saw this. Tom Cotton, the senator, is it senator or congressman? He's like, Chuck Schumer won't join in with these anti-Semitic laws, and I'm like, you mean anti-free speech laws? Anyway, then they don't get it when I come out like that. But that's who I am. Okay, so there we go. Nick, is there any update on him? Not really. Nick Fuentes, however, he was arrested, so I think we must go to that. Let's see if I can find. I had all this good stuff for. Okay, let's see if we can. Sorry, folks, I'm going to have to get rid of the chat here. We'll go over here. We'll go over to Twitter. Nick Fuentes charged. There you go. Just revealed that Nick Fuentes has been hiding the fact that he was booked and charged with battery on the 27th of November for macing an elderly Jewish lady. Okay, who cares if she's Jewish? Why does this happen? It was a black man and it's a white man. Okay, who cares? I know, because Nick hates the Jews. And then pushing her downstairs, breaking her ribs. I didn't know that. He is expecting. Okay, remember when we went through this whole thing? I told you, there's assault, there's a battery, there's assault with a deadly weapon, right? There's aggravated assault. There's aggravated battery. We will say this once again. Battery is the actual physical pushing, touching, unwanted to another person, okay, without their consent. Assault is feeling the apprehension of being, hurt, harmed, hit, whatever. Did she have the apprehension? Perhaps. Maybe it was too quick, so she didn't even have that. Anyway, it looks like they actually got him on battery. There was. Oh, this is. Here we need to do this. Okay. Hey, you all. This is the lady. We're going to have an uptick in Nazi and incel BS. Our GFA. Too many. Acronyms here is the spot for updates. I don't care what that says. This has been confirmed in a statement from Marla Rose, the victim of the attack. Okay. Mrs. Rose's war chest continues to grow as Fuentes' irrational actions and insane statements continue to hurt himself and his allies while benefiting his critics and enemies. $6,000 raised. Is that a war chest? It's probably what I'm going to have to pay for my floors. Details. Okay, let's go here. Let's go to Kiwi Farms. Reporting Detective Quattrochi. Okay, well, he didn't get a Jewish detective, so he'll probably be happy with that. Maybe I need to fix this so you all can see it. Okay, let's do a little smaller. Okay, I don't know. Maybe we're getting there. There we go. Now we'll bring that bigger. This is what happens, people. I need to go up. All right, there we go. Reporting Detective Quattrochi. This is a BWC. I don't know what that means. Black while cocked? About while cocked? Blowing while cocked with Destiny. Probably battery with something. Incident. And parts of this incident were reviewed prior to this report. This is a supplemental report that should be read in conjunction with all other reports related to Berlin incident. Report number blah, blah, blah. For a complete and accurate account of the incident. This report is written in summary, not verbatim. Okay, a lot of talking about this report. On the above date, I was informed that Nicholas Fuentes was in the lobby of the police department. I met Nick and at 1903 hours, escorted him to a secure, non-public area where he got blown by Destiny. Oh, no, that doesn't say it. Area where we traveled in the booking area. Fuentes was searched for weapons and seated on a bench. Fuentes, wooden bench, don't put him on a train, or I don't know what the. Fuentes was fingerprinted for positive identification and processed on the following. Class A misdemeanor, signed by Marla Rose. 720, I don't know what that is. That's probably the Illinois criminal code. Battery. Fuentes signs the citation and notice to appear, which showed on the court date. Okay, so it's just basically case closed. Well, it's not case closed, but he's just, let's go to the full chat again. He's just, He's getting booked. Battery. So I told you that was the case when we talked about that. I'm like, it's just plain and simple. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of Nick, but even without that, I mean, you open your door and you just start macing someone. You gotta feel some threat. And there, I don't think there's the duty to retreat in Illinois. So he was kind of screwed there. I don't think I go up there. I saw the video with the cops. She wasn't saying anything about her ribs. Interesting. The little hats finally got him. She wanted him arrested and said she didn't say because he broke my rib. Goddammit. To the farms. Yeah. And is that name Italian? I hope it is. Case will be dropped. I don't know if the case will be dropped, and the reason being, well, who knows? It really is up to the DA at this point to see if they're going to prosecute him. He'll probably just plead out, and she's going to be all excited. And people, this is just simple. He was getting death threats. I know he was getting death threats. I understand. You don't say, let's say it's a legitimate threat that someone's going to come kill you, and they're like, and I'm gonna, whatever, a lot of detail, and then someone rings your door and you go to the door and you consent to opening the door, and then you just start shooting at him. I mean, that doesn't, I get it. Call the cops, leave your house, do whatever you do. I mean, I know he's defending his gay little house there. Maybe he thought it was, he thought it was destiny, and he was just like, I'm gonna squirt. And whoops, that's not what I meant to do. All right, everybody, let's go to the Dave Smith episode. This was part of the problem. This was, let's see here. This is the chat. I'm sorry, I have too much shit going on. There we go. Okay, there we go. Dave Smith, part of the problem, episode 1200 with Robbie, the Fire, Bernstein, Shoei, that's his co-host. They're in studio there. Robbie's not looking happy. And, Clint Russell asked me, he's like, why do you think he reacted this way? And I'm like, I could only imagine that maybe just Thanksgiving was too much. Maybe Thanksgiving was just too much for him. A little too hard, family time. I don't know. Maybe buying a new car has been stressful. We got a lot of options, but let's go right here to the tape. Everybody, let me know if you can't hear it, but here we go.
I called too from the chat.
Oh, and by the way, this just so you know, this is Dave Smith. Part of the problem. He reads. He filmed his show for the mass production, and puts it on YouTube a few hours later or the next day. But during the show, if you pay, you can be in the live chat. And it's a nice little chat. People there, Adam Choit's in there, a few others. And sometimes he takes questions. And he said, I'll take a question. Now, I was on vacation with my wife. I was working at the table on the beach. And I was like, I want to ask this question. And I knew when I said the word justified, I put it in, and then I'm like, and I rewrote it and sent, but they read the first one. So, here we go. Here's the question.
Great. Dave, if Cuomo is a failed commentator and conducted journalistic malpractice, how do you justify Patrick Bet-David hiring him?
Okay. My biggest mistake was saying, how do you? Because I actually thought about that, and I'm like, the proverbial you. I don't mean how does Dave Smith justify him? And that was my problem. And that's where little Robbie Chavez here with his mustache goes a little bit berserk. I didn't want Dave to say, how do I, because that's a stupid question. That is a stupid question. So I meant to say, how do we justify, how does Cuomo justify this? That's really what I should have said. So, and maybe I did say that, but he read it anyway.
That's fairly easy. I mean, the debate with me doesn't happen unless Patrick Bet-David hires him. So come on, wasn't that fucking worth it? I mean, I don't know, right? Like, I mean, that is, look, I'll say this. I'm not saying anything.
Why do I have to have a job justifying who Patrick Bet-David hires?
Yeah, well, I
hate the question. Go fuck yourself.
Well, look, I mean,
your answer.
We don't have to talk to our paid subscribers that way necessarily.
I hate the accusatory fan questions.
Okay, it's not an accusatory fan question. I mean, get your panties out of a bunch. It's okay, fine. But can you answer the actual question, the meat of the substance of here? Robbie, Mr. Anti-Vax, I hate all these people. You've gone to great length and great defense of the situation. You've probably gone after Cuomo himself. It does seem a little weird that now you're going to jack for him here, right? And I get it. You didn't like the way I said you just, let's be adults here. Do you really think, once again, phrasing, I was on the beach, I typed this up real quick, I sent it in. I did not mean, and I actually sent Dave a DM. I'm like, thanks for answering this. By the way, I didn't mean for you to justify your hiring because Dave has nothing to do with that. But how does anybody justify this situation? Right? It just doesn't make sense.
So how do you I don't work for Patrick Bet-David, neither do you. Patrick Bet-David has a successful online operation. He actually does a lot of things really, really well. As to why he wanted to or didn't want to. Why is that? What, am I supposed to write a research paper for you right now?
Let's be honest. I don't think I would get a written research paper from either one of these guys.
Bet-David doesn't do, or why that made sense. Well, I think what he's trying to ask, and now I'm getting a little steam, I think what he's trying to ask is why do you still endorse Patrick Bet-David or still rely on him if he was willing to hire this other person? Because he does.
No, that's not what I meant. Because Dave could go do whatever he wants. Dave goes there and destroys him. I don't care that Dave does that. And once again, this is on me. This is on me for how I posed the question. But I think it's a valid question of how does this, how do we, once again, I'm getting all caught up here. How is Patrick Bet-David justify hiring him, right? In any sense of the word. This is a person that literally, as Dave put to the hammer him when he had the debate, Dave showed what a complete piece of trash he is. And then you're going to, once again, and I've talked about this ad infinitum, but I'm going to go on here too. Then you talk about, he goes to Patrick Bet-David, and somehow I'm supposed to think that Patrick Bet-David is some sort of wonderful businessman when he literally hired what I think is a crook, right? Or someone doing the government's bidding. And then, the right wing, they're all like, yeah, well, he makes a lot of money. He puts you on his show. Okay.
He does incredible work on the internet.
Does he? That's my point. This is, it does it ever put into question what he does on the internet when Patrick Bet-David hires Cuomo? It's like Robbie hiring Fauci.
Yeah. And so do I think that one hiring unwinds all the, and by the way, I don't watch all of his work.
Maybe it does unwind it. Maybe it does. I mean, people will say all kinds of stuff like, oh, would you hire Epstein? Right? Would you hire, and you're like, Tyler, we're not talking about him being pedophilic. No, but what he promote at the time that was most critical. Dave will say this, and that's why he worked him over. It blew me away that Dave is able to sit there and trash Cuomo bit after bit, and he just did it again online, which made me think of this. And then you don't at all just go like, how do you I don't know how you sleep with yourself that he's on that.
I'm not a huge fan, but like we correlate with him enough, and he props up what we do. So I once again just want to reiterate, fuck you, and I hate accusatory questions with very specific framing.
Well, look, it is the truth that it is true, and I don't say fuck you and thank you.
I'll say it again, fuck you.
Thank you for subscribing. Please don't cancel based on Rob. I'll get rid of Rob. Don't worry, his day's here.
Why would I cancel? I don't really give a shit. This is all entertainment, people. But I do think it's, and I will take a full accountability for my phrasing you. I didn't mean that, but it does kind of makes it weird that you can't think out of the box and go, okay, let's talk about this. Why would he hire him? What justification does that pull? Does it taint Patrick Bet-David's, any of it? Of having this guy on here, and why does that happen? And then right wingers love it. So.
You're numbered anyway. I'm not in the business of justifying anyone who Pat hires because he has a right to hire whoever he wants to. But if I was to say, I mean, I do think there's something that like, I think that there is it's such a tragedy, and it's like I'm like struggling to find the words to just talk about what a guy, like straight out of like a Greek tragedy that nobody so far has been held accountable for what the.
Okay, so here we go. No one's been held accountable. I trashed him in a debate, but let's reward him by putting him getting lots of money. According to a source, he got paid a ton of money to come to this network. So we are not only not holding him accountable, we are, and someone should hold him accountable, but not Patrick Bet-David. Don't have him do it. Sorry.
The insane tyrannical COVID response. And it's such an outrage that this wasn't a major topic during the 2024. I mean, just imagine, like in the year 2020, in the year 2021, in the year 2022, they would be like, there's a presidential election coming up in a couple years. And you'd be like, obviously the first thing that should be discussed would be, let's have a review of all this, like let's
put him on Patrick Bet-David's show and then tell me to go fuck myself.
Like there's never a time that we can look back and go like, hey, we have all the data now. We have all the data. There is no difference between the lockdown states and the not lockdown states. Like that, no one gets fired over that. Forget like.
No, they get hired. That's my point. Isn't that the point? And I love you, Dave Smith. And I don't think Dave is. And once again, it's on me for the way I phrased the one word. I should have said PDB rather than you. I was proverbial. But isn't that the point I'm getting at? And now this is where I said even in the chat, I go, oh, I think Dave's defending.
Like even being prosecuted, no one's just like out of a job. It's a goddamn tragedy, right?
You want him out of a job, so that was my question.
And then shortly after that, it's like the fact that we live in this new media landscape, and it isn't just like, hey, Fauci's got to come sit for like hostile interviews.
No. Yeah. Okay. So the one debate is supposed to justify all this. No, we don't even want him to sit for one thing. How about the Blaze hire Fauci or the Daily Wire?
Fauci's got to go debate somebody. All these guys, Hotez, they got to go debate somebody. They have to. That's it, dude. Like you either have to do that or you're professionally ruined forever. You know. And none of that. The only thing that ever happened was me and Cuomo debating.
And then, so that's the penance he pays. He gets trashed by Dave, and then he still gets paid. So what is it? Does it make a difference?
And it's like, I'm just saying, it's like, this was the only time. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's been another one. And me and you pay attention to this stuff pretty closely. There's the only time that someone who you could say was like a major player in the COVID regime, like in terms of the media apparatus portion of it, at least, he was debatably the biggest, you know?
Okay. That's why I'm like, how does this get justified? I thank you, Dave, for supporting.
Oh, like the number one show at CNN. Okay. That guy had to sit and have a public 3-hour debate with, I would describe myself as a competent critic of the COVID regime. I think that's valuable, and I think part of the reason why it got such a huge response that it was this kind of cathartic moment for a lot of us, myself included. And that only happens because Patrick Bet-David was working with the guy. So again, I'm just saying, even if I go a step further and even go like, well, do I think it was a good hire or not for that moment? And obviously I'm, have my own perverse incentives here. It was good for me. But
how do you justify
right
Piers Morgan having pro-Israel people on the show? Because it makes for good television, and he's making a television show. And guess what?
Those are guests, okay? Those are guests of a left of center host, okay? So, I mean, that makes zero sense, Robbie.
When you go on there, you get to reach a wide audience and you get to slam these people down.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what Cuomo's role is on that show, how often he's on. But once again, speaking to this fan of how do I justify. Why is it your job to justify who Patrick Bet-David does or doesn't hire?
It is not. All right, let's read the other question and then.
No, so we're done there. That's all. I got worked up. I got worked up just watching it again. Okay, so let's maybe go to the chat here and see how bad this. Did you guys trash me? I hope so. I hope someone took me on. Okay, he was just getting death threats, just pepper spray, losers. LOL. Okay. When these YouTube premieres go live, I try to trick people into sending in super chats. It's funny when it works and they just waste $10. No, give me the fucking money. Ooh, I'm a podcaster, Dave. I know reality as well. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Hi, Shannon, Jesse. Yeah, calm down, Robbie. Every time. What else we have? I've never listened to PDB. Look, I will say I liked him better when he didn't have all these complete losers around him. Okay, Vinny's okay. But he's got this guy, Adam, that is just unbearable. I did some shows with it. He's got this older dude that seems lost a lot until you talk finance, and he seems to kind of wake up. But you know what? He's got Cuomo there too. And then he has his home team. And I told you, it's The View. And the reason being is because they do shit like hire Cuomo and then get all worked up like Robbie when people are like, this is kind of bullshit. And so I took a shot. Shot at Tyler starting drama. I'm so proud. Yes, I am. And by the way, Mark Vestibule, our esteemed gentleman in the Tower Game chat, he seemed to, and people can say it's a stupid question all they want. I grant that I said one word in there wrong. Instead of you, I should have said PDB or something like that. I haven't listened to Part of the Problem in 12 years. Because I do real politics. Yeah, there you go, Forrest Mommy. Welcome. How you doing? Drama. PDB was justified to hire Cuomo because he lets Dave on his podcast. Yeah, that didn't make any sense. But I don't begrudge these two. I'm tired of all these people. No offense. When I show up to fight the literal government, no one like Dave or Robbie or Dave is there. Two Daves. Which is the other Dave? Dave or Robbie or Dave. Okay. It is weird when Musk hired Don Lemon too. Yeah, I agree. No, did he? I don't think he hired him. There was, I think that one was, he said he can be on his platform, and I don't know, there seemed to be a little mistake there, but maybe he did. He fired him right away, right? At least he was like, hey, fuck this guy. I don't think that's, Dave and Robbie will never inspire people to fight the government because then they won't get listened to. I don't know about that. I don't have a problem with these two. Tyler is 100% cooler than Dave or Robbie, just FYI. I agree. That's hard to that's hard to argue with. Oh my God, an ex-employee is on the board of Tegna. I don't know what's going on there. So I will say this. If you got, here's what I like about Dave. I haven't met Robbie, but he did freak out a little bit. I got to take him off my other screen here because it's too much. He's really, I mean, take a look at this. Oh, not that one. There you go. What's up with the beanie? I guess it's in the winter. I don't know. Dave Smith, I've met him. He was so nice to me in person. He was walking by, he was at the LP convention in Reno, and he was there with some people, and I was like, oh, Dave Smith. And then I was with Toad, and Dave goes by, and I'm like, hey, Dave, I'm Tyler. And he goes, I know who you are. I've seen your show. And he was super nice. And then later he did come on my show. And kind of because of that, but he was super nice to me. And I've had, before he just was blowing up this part of this year, he would have DMs with me, and he was always super, super nice. I think he's just too big at this point, or he's grown tired of me. But he's had specific questions to me, legal questions that I've answered to him, and I've heard him talk about it multiple times, the way I phrased it. So I at some point I'm like, hey, I'm happy with that. It's nice that he got some of my my info. So I don't have a problem with he and Robbie. And this is mostly, it's in jest. I just, it's humorous to me to see someone freak out about that. And by the way, this is on me once again for the way I phrase this. But I mean, come on, it's also, dude, come on. Let's mellow the fuck out a little bit. I don't know if there's maybe there's some sort of kickback there. So we kind of have to, okay. The Supreme Court, I think we need to look here at, let's take a look here. We're going out, wait, we had one more thing here. First one, I said libertarian influencers, in quotes, have zero actual political experience. It makes me mad because we need people getting involved. I agree. Local is the way to go. JC says big podcasters have no problem going smaller accounts for help, then forgetting about them soon after. Well, I'll just say, Dave's been, he hasn't been that guy. Now, it's a little disappointing that he hasn't shouted me out when he came on my show. I was like, hey, maybe he gets a shout out like I'm going on Tyler's show, but he doesn't shout anybody out. He just says, I'm going on big shows, and then he goes. So he did come on my show, and I really appreciate it. He'd spent like 2+ hours with me. So it was quite nice. He was very gracious, very nice person. I don't have a problem with that. And so I had appreciated that. I appreciated Clint and a lot of the bigger shows that were willing to come on the little shows like me, because this really is. I'm a pretty small one. I think we need 0 political parties, not a third. You guys discuss among yourself. Okay, so this is the questions here. This is let's see here. Let's read a little bit about this. This was a law in Tennessee, and it had to do with restricting gender affirming care, or testosterone, basically, or whatever, restricting it, basically castrating young kids before a certain age. I think it was under 18, but we'll get to it a little bit here. And it passed, and then it got appealed. It was in Tennessee, and now it came before the Supreme Court. So you had basically one of the parties that had brought this, because they were an affected party, some teen young girl or boy, or one that's mentally confused, wanting to go to they had standing for this, and I don't know if it was the ACLU as one group, and they had a transitioning lawyer. It was a girl that tried to look like a boy, sounded like a girl. I was more, and so that person did some arguing. And then Perligar, the Solicitor General for the government, they also took a position on this. And I'm like, It's typical. It's anyway, it was very political that they came in there. And they made arguments as well. So we'll talk about what dictates all this. And is it basically it's my bane forever. It's the 14th Amendment coming up, bothering us, tickling us, doing all kinds of bad stuff. That's what it is. That's really running this one. Equal protection, substantive due process, and it's all made up law. It's all made up law coming from there. We can talk about that. I'm going to at some point do a big breakdown. I actually even got my my constitutional law book here, because there's some good stuff in here. Maybe we'll read a few passages here. What kind of right? Okay, so the questions presented. In recent years, a number of minors receiving gender dysphoria diagnosis has exploded. States have also seen a corresponding surge in unproven and risky medical interventions for these underage patients. It is undisputed that these hormonal and surgical interventions carry serious and potentially irreversible side effects, including infertility, diminished bone density, sexual dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. States across the country have responded to these developments by enacting laws designed to ensure that potentially irreversible sex transition interventions of uncertain benefit are not performed on minors who may not be fully able to fully grasp their lifelong consequences and risks. Tennessee, for example, prohibited 3 types of medical interventions for minors. Okay, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and sex transition surgeries. Plaintiffs, supported by the United States, challenged Tennessee's law as violating equal protection and substantive due process. Where's the boo? Do I have a boo of laughter? How about this? All right, that's what I think of both of those. The Sixth Circuit, in an opinion by Judge Sutton and joined by Judge Thapar, upheld Tennessee's common sense child protection law. See that case there? As the Sixth Circuit explained, the Constitution is neutral about legislative regulations of new and potentially irreversible medical treatments for minors, and plenty of rational basis exists for these laws. We'll talk about that a bit. So when you go through equal protection, there's 3 different types of scrutiny that the government goes through depending on what it is. Okay, is it and then substantive due process is similar, which is if it's a fundamental right, we do certain types of scrutiny there as well. But there's 3 types for the equal protection. This is precisely the kind of situation in which life-tenured judges construing a difficult-to-amend constitution should be humble and careful about announcing new substantive due process or equal protection rights that limit accountable elected officials from sorting out these medical, social, and political challenges. The questions presented are, so this is what the court's going to determine. So you're going to hear a lot of arguments, and when you first take on a case like this is what always happens, right? Which is you see an issue and it's just a blanket issue like an illegal alien is allowed to own a gun, and you're like, oh my God, right? Or the state should not allow sexual transition or medicine for this, castration, medical castration or whatnot for a minor, and you're like, oh my God. But then you got to look into it, and there's got to be justifications for how these laws are presented. If you don't have this scrutiny type, and if the law isn't written in a certain way, it could be unambiguous or to the point where it's then able to, the camel's nose under the tent, where you're able to use it for all kinds of bad. And that's what we do want to keep out. So, an unintended consequence for a law like this could be something completely different, right? And that you haven't thought about. And if you don't narrowly tailor it specifically to this issue, you could get, the lefties using it or bad people using it in a way that restricts your ability to, maybe get actual medical treatment that you want as a child that isn't about sexual transition. Whether the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment prohibits states from enacting laws protecting children from sex transition medical interventions without risk of lifelong harm. I'm not going to read, by the way, the decisions here. I'm just going to talk about it. Whether the substantive component of the Due Process Clause gives a parent a right to demand cross-medical interventions for children that state has found to be unproven and excessively risky. So, Let's talk about the substantive due process, which is if you have, there's things what they call fundamental rights. Now, the problem with the substantive due process is there's no such thing in the Constitution, no such thing in the 14th Amendment called substantive due process. There is in the 9th Amendment where it says, we could look at it here, and other, rights that aren't enumerated or something like that. So they're like, oh, unenumerated rights. Those are rights not listed in there. We shall do something about. So they start making up rights, right? The right to privacy, parenting. Parents have a fundamental, it's called a fundamental right. So they have fundamental rights. And then there's a different type of scrutiny that you enable to a fundamental right as compared to something that's just a right, okay? And depending on what this scrutiny is, the more fundamental right that it is, less, then the scrutiny becomes more different. Heightened scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and rational basis, low scrutiny. So the low one, the rational basis, just have to have, the government has to have rational reason that, you pass this law, which is an easy standard to overcome. Whereas the strict scrutiny, and we can talk about what those actually are. I might even actually have it listed out here. Okay, to talk about classifications, what is the appropriate level of scrutiny? I should have just brought out a rational basis test. The rational basis test is a minimal level of scrutiny for that all government actions challenged under equal protection must meet. In other words, unless the government action is the type of discrimination that warrants the application of intermediate or strict scrutiny, rational basis review is used. Although the court has phrased the test in different ways over time, the basic requirement is that a law meets rational basis review if it is rationally related to a legitimate government purpose, okay? Which is pretty easy to do. And then there's cases in here. So what's a legitimate purpose? And there's all this kind of shit here. So I believe the lower courts used rational basis for this under equal protection. And so the court was actually, the Pelagar, the government's attorney was actually arguing that it should be remanded back and they should use intermediate scrutiny based on the differences. Because right now, if you look at different types of scrutiny that's happening for different, race, gender, there's race is, I think, heightened scrutiny. Gender right now is medium scrutiny, intermediate. So she's like, that was the attorney general, the solicitor general, I don't remember what you call her. She was saying it should be remanded back because they used rational basis, and she wants intermediate scrutiny to be happening. So what was interesting too was the breakdown of what the different judges. It was some crazy shit, and maybe we'll go to that. I think that's what I do want to see is do they talk about what? Let's look here. Rational basis. Let's see if they do intermediate. Judge White then concluded that I don't think that's the one I wanted. The United States argues that the act fails to heighten scrutiny, but even if the act were to subject to heightened scrutiny, petitioners fare no better. Okay, I wanted to see if they had the definition of what intermediate scrutiny was, but I'm not finding it right off the bat. Okay, so I think what I wanted to do was go play some of these clips. I think that's the way we want to handle this. We'll shut these guys out. We're going to bring, I think I have to do it this way. There we go. Okay, so this is, look at this. Advocates of gender affirming care made at least 6 false dubious claims in the Supreme Court oral arguments for U.S. v. Scrimetti today. Transgender, remember, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she had previously indicated that, I think in her confirmation, that she didn't know what a woman was, or she couldn't really say what a woman was. And I said at the time, I'm like, that might come back to bite her, because you actually have to know in certain court cases what a woman is. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make sense to, this. So, let's see if we see more here. Oh, these are my bookmarks that I had done for some of these. Okay, here it is over here. Okay. U.S. Elizabeth Preligar claimed that puberty blockers entail just pressing pause. So some of this came about was the medical issues. And so Let's play this clip real quick. I think we're going to
ban on puberty blockers, which is just pressing pause on someone's endogenous puberty to give them more time to understand their identity. With respect to hormone use, there are some effects on fertility, but the court found that many individuals who are transgender remain fertile after taking these medications. They can conceive biological children. There are fertility preservation measures that they can undertake, and that they have to be counseled on those risks. And as I said before, I can understand that that could be a hard trade-off, but it's not unique to this care. There are other treatments for adolescents that likewise affect fertility, including some of those that SB1 expressly permits, like on intersex individuals who often have surgeries as infants that might permanently affect their fertility. I would also say that if you are concerned about fertility, there are measures the state could undertake, like requiring warnings, more informed counseling, trying to ensure that there's informed consent in this area. You also mentioned the possibility of regret. The record evidence demonstrates that the rates of regret are very low because for the population that has access to this treatment, so these are adolescents who have marked and sustained gender dysphoria that has worsened with the onset of puberty, they are very likely to persist in their gender identity.
Okay, there's a lot of BS there, and I think that's kind of what he's showing. What is interesting, though, is the equal protection is you can't have similarly situated people being treated differently. And it was interesting that the Pelagar and then Chase Strelongo, the female / man, they were making arguments that since it was a transgender, that it wasn't, even that person themselves, since they wanted to be someone else, that was actually discriminating against them for being a woman who wants to be. It was crazy, but they're just people, and it has to do with age rather than gender. And I think that's the Ketanji Brown Jackson was kind of crazy on this. Kagan and Sotomayor as well. I didn't even remember hearing Gorsuch say much. Alito really did chime in a lot. Let's see what he has to say here in this one.
Hotly disputed, and that's a bit distressing. One of them has to do with the risk of suicide. Do you maintain that the procedures and medications in question reduce the risk of suicide?
I do, Justice Alito, maintain that.
Does that sound like a dude?
The medications in question reduce the risk of depression, anxiety, and suicidality, which are all indicators of potential suicide.
And do you think that's clearly established? Do you think there's reason for disagreement about that?
I do think it is clearly established in the science and in the record. I think, as with all underlying questions of.
By the way, I'm sorry. I know you guys are fascinated by this. I thought it was. I was curious to see that when someone usually goes before the Supreme Court, they go there because they are highly qualified, skilled, have been there before, lot going on, right? That gets you there. This person is only there because they are a transitioned attorney, okay? And I was curious to see if the judges would use, tender hands in their arguments. And for the most part, they kind of were. I mean, I would say Alito was not. At one point, they started to go down the mental health route, and I thought that was fascinating. But they really, really went after the attorney general from, I think, the Tennessee or whoever was Scrimeti. Was it Scrimeti? I don't know. Yes, I think it was Scrimeti. That was the Tennessee.
Looking at evidence, there can be disagreement. I don't dispute that. But here, and sort of going back to questions about the Cass review, for example, the Cass review only looked at studies up until 2022.
Well, I don't regard the Cass review as necessarily as the Bible or as some.
Cass review was a study that came out, I think it was in Europe. They referenced it a bunch, that really contradicted a lot of what the attorney solicitor general had to say, and this woman attorney had to say about the effects of transitioning, okay, the long-term effects. And it really came out and said no. And I think Europe, they even were citing there that Europe itself has really detransitioned, moved away from a lot.
Something that's true in every respect. But on page 195 of the Cass report, it says, there is no evidence that gender affirmative treatments reduce suicide.
What I think that is referring to is there is no evidence in the studies that this treatment reduces completed suicide. And the reason for that is completed suicide, thankfully and admittedly, is rare, and we're talking about a very small population of individuals with studies that don't necessarily have completed suicides within them. However, there are multiple studies.
This is interesting because none of this has to do with the actual law that they have to do. And actually, I think Kagan, is this where she says, by the way, they kept going over Loving v. Virginia, which is a case about, I think, and I'll read it actually here a little bit here. But I think it was Kagan actually said at one point, I don't care about putting everything in a legal box. And I'm like, that's literally what your job is. Let's see what this bitch has to say.
Boy who can receive estrogen for that, because at 9 years old, if he has hair, he gets laughed at and picked on, and his puberty is coming in too early. But a girl who has unwanted hair says, or has unwanted breasts, or a boy at that age can get that drug, but the other can't. That's the sex-based difference. It's not the medical condition is the same. And
we don't
but
agree.
You're saying one sex is getting it and the other's not.
We do not agree that the medical condition is the same. We do not think that giving puberty blockers to a 6-year-old that has started precocious puberty is the same medical treatment as giving it to a minor who wants to transition. Those are not the same medical treatment. And once
what
you
you're saying
recognize,
is you're still depending on sex to identify who can get it and who can't.
I don't think so, Your Honor. If a minor comes up to a boy, goes to the doctor, and
she's saying that because the treatment for even though the idea is the same, that they're gender confused and they got mental health problems, and the girl wants to be a boy and a boy wants to be a girl, since they want to be different things, and the treatment is different between boys and girls because boys and girls are different. Therefore, since that treatment is different, they are different. And it's like, I think it's the process that's the same, and that's kind of what he's
says, I want puberty blockers to transition. The answer will be no. If a girl goes up to the doctor and says, I want...
If a sex-neutral looking child walks into a doctor and says, I don't want to grow...
JC says they know what they're doing. They are monsters. Okay, did Cuomo know what he was doing? Is he a monster? Do we want to hire monsters? And Dave Smith can you justify that? That's the joke. Okay. Kinda.
Grow breasts. Doesn't the doctor have to know whether it's a girl or a boy before they prescribe the drug?
I don't think so, Your Honor.
I got to tell you, I've made that mistake on children often.
I bet you have.
Look at one of them and think it's a boy, and I'm corrected, and it's a girl, and vice versa. I hope that you're not going to tell me you haven't made that mistake.
Well, I may have made that mistake, Your Honor, but I don't think that is an example of where a sex-based line is being drawn.
Why not?
Yeah,
please.
Because all that matters is the medical purpose for which the drug is used. So if the minor comes up, if you have a biological...
No, it's the same medical purpose. Her hypothetical is, I don't want to grow breasts. Same medical purpose. I'm trying to stop the development of breasts.
Well, Your Honor, I think that likely would not be allowed under SB 1 for a girl.
For a woman who is, for a girl, but
yeah, and it would also not be allowed under Tennessee law.
She said woman, she said girl. Remember in her confirmation, she didn't know what those words meant.
With respect to a biological boy.
Really?
Tennessee law doesn't just allow doctors to prescribe drugs without a medical purpose. They can't.
No.
Okay, that was interesting. Let's see if we have any more that I want to get around.
This treatment. The question is...
Shut up, bitch. Ellen Kagan said the Tennessee law aims to enforce gender conformity because it opposes... I want to get into the...
Related purposes of this law is essentially to encourage gender conformity and to discourage anything other than gender conformity. And I'm wondering how you think that plays into the analysis.
I disagree with that characterization of our law.
Well, encourage minors to appreciate their sex and ban treatments that might encourage minors to become disdainful of their sex. Sounds to me like we want boys to be boys and we want girls to be girls.
Yes, and where is the... Yes, that's exactly it.
If I could,
and that's an important purpose behind the law. And I understand that sentiment, but it's a fundamentally different sentiment, and it's a fundamentally different understanding of what produced this law than the one that you're talking about now.
Your Honor, if I could make a few points. First of all, it sounds like the question is rooted in a potential improper purpose-based argument under our Arlington Heights argument, which, as Chief Judge Sutton pointed out below, that argument was never raised until it got to this court.
Well, I'm less interested in sort of like the legal box to put this in, and more interested in, you're spending a lot of time talking.
That is a stunning from Kagan. Now, I think it was Sotomayor who, during the COVID shit, she was talking about how, well, one of the arguments was, I think it was the OSHA ban. They were trying to force the vaccine and some other stuff through OSHA, and she was talking about the police powers of the federal government, and the guy's like, the federal government has police powers, and she's like, oh yeah, they do. And no, they don't. So this is kind of up there with that. We're like, wait, I know much more intelligent than me. I grant you that. You would not have said, how do you justify Robbie Bernstein, the hiring of Patrick McDavid, of Cuomo? You would have said it better. I get it. Okay. I may have been drinking already before noon, but that's what it was. Kagan, though, she just said the most shocking thing here. Let's go right back.
A lot of time talking about what exactly the classification is here, and I think we've talked a good deal about that. But what produced this classification might be relevant to understanding what the classification is about.
Absolutely, and I would love to address.
And what seems to have produced this classification is that we want to ban children treatments that might encourage minors to become disdainful of their sex. So we think that there's something fundamentally wrong, fundamentally bad about youth who are trying to transition. And that's the way this purpose seems to me.
And by the way, here's the fight, which is the rational basis is almost always, the levels of scrutiny, rational basis under equal protection is almost always this law is going to pass. Okay, it's going to be found constitutional. Strict scrutiny is almost always going to fail. It's going to be very difficult to do unless it's, very specific, narrowly tailored to a compelling state interest. The intermediate scrutiny is more of a toss-up, but it makes it more difficult for this law to pass as well. That's why Pelagar is trying to push this. This is why these ones, and by the way, as soon as you get Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson here, she's going to equate this to Loving v. Virginia, which was interracial marriage. Marriage is strict scrutiny, okay? That's heightened scrutiny. We'll just go here that there's distinctions between citizens solely because of their ancestry as being odious to a free people whose institutions are founded upon the doctrine of equality. At the very least, the Equal Protection Clause demands that racial classifications, especially subject in criminal statutes, be subjected to the most rigid scrutiny, Karematsu v. United States, and if they are ever upheld, that they be shown to be necessary to the accomplishment of some permissible state objective independent of racial discrimination, which it was the object of the 14th Amendment to eliminate. No legit state interest. So let's listen to this with that in mind of how Loving is, which is heightened scrutiny, and now she's going to, as we can see here in the pretense, equate 50s, it to that.
They sound in the same kinds of arguments that were made back in the day, 50s, 60s, with respect to racial classifications and inconsistencies. I'm thinking in particular about Loving, and I'm wondering whether you've thought about the parallels, because I see one, as to how this statute operates and how the anti-miscegenation.
Medically castrating a child is equal to Loving, which is about interracial marriage.
Statutes in Virginia operated.
Yes, and I think the court has recognized that the equal protection.
By the way, if you guys watch Uncivil Law, he has a boner for Prelagar. I think she's very intelligent. She is, but she's one of these monsters because she argues for the most evil shit, which she's doing here. And she has bangs. So if you have bangs, how intelligent can you possibly be?
Clause was intended to force some changes in society and get us to think more closely about the way that people were being classified, including when that was based on overbroad generalizations of how we expect them to live and order their affairs. And the court has made that clear in the sex discrimination cases as well, where it said sometimes these laws operate to disadvantage someone who falls outside the average description, and that person needs the protection of the court.
Well, and the thing I thought what was most interesting about the potential comparison to Loving is that in that case, everyone seemed to concede up front that a racial classification was being drawn by the statute. That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, that there is absolutely a parallel between any law.
All right, I don't believe that. Let me see if there's any last ones. I want to get something that's Matt Rice debunked her claim, saying it relies on equating fundamentally different medical treatments. We talked about that one. Okay, I think we're gonna just go out from there. So, what's the likely outcome of this? It looked like to me that you got the freaks, Sotomayor, Kagan, Ketanji Brown, Jackson, kind of dealing with. They want this. They want to rule in favor of medically castrating your kids. Okay, fine. But it sounded like to me the others were not interested. And what that means is that this would be held, especially for children. It's going to, and I think that's where it really needs to pivot here. It's going to be held under the rational basis test for the scrutiny, rational basis for determining equal protection. Now, substantive due process, it is an interesting aspect to which they're looking at there, which is if you're a parent, you should be able to make decisions for your child, and you shouldn't have the government coming in and making those decisions for you. So you have a fundamental right, and that is basically a heightened scrutiny, is similar to the strict scrutiny that would be dealt with for your fundamental rights. That the government can't come and overrule that. And you can see that with the actual presentation of what the issues are, whether the substantive component of the due process clause gives a parent a right to demand cross-medical interventions for children that a state has found to be unproven and excessively risky. So what they're actually arguing there is, my comments aren't showing up to Tyler. That's what Garbage Man said. I think they are. I think they're showing up here. What they're indicating here then is that you as a parent should have a right to push through to the government, pass the government's law, because you have a fundamental right in how your child is raised. The question is, that is always the case, but then there are limits, right? And what are those limits? Do you get to say, hey, I'm all for giving my kid Coke? Okay, not cocaine. No, I mean not Coca-Cola, but cocaine. And if that's the case, I think the state has the ability to come in and basically, X that out, because that's what Nick Rekieta was doing, right? You don't just get to have those kind of medical procedures. We see that often, which is maybe someone has a religious belief. They have a fundamental right for that. That's perfectly fine. But at what point does that overreach that you are perhaps harming your child? If a medical procedure could save your child, and even with that, you're like, hey, it's against my religious beliefs, and we're not going to do that. The state sometimes steps in. Do I agree with that? That's a thing that we're dealing with, right? The libertarian world and consent of children, right? They don't have the ability to consent. So with that in mind, I don't think the due process is, I think it's going to be pushed back, and I think that it's eventually going to be one for the good guys, right, in a sense. And once again, this pushes back to this whole ridiculousness of the 14th Amendment. There are some valid points to that, and when I had Jonathan Scriven on, he's like, what about citizenship? I'm like, let's carve this shit out. This by the way, I think at some point we will talk about, you got privileges and immunities clause, but then you have privileges or immunities, which are part of the 14th Amendment. equal protection, substantive due process. A lot of problems have come about, and these liberals and these progressives have really pushed this, expanded the scope of the federal government that has pushed back against the ability to people like Forrest Mommy to do what she wants there in the state of Colorado. Sorry to dox you out there. Forrest Mommy's ex-friend who became a judge. I don't know what you're talking about. Has Daniel Penny's case been discussed? Not yet. Did we get a resolution on that? Let me just go here. I don't think, I think they're still in deliberations, right? And what about the assassin? What about the assassin? Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll head out. Let's see how I want to do this browser reading. But I want to browser this other one. Hang on, people. There we go. Let's go here. So this person, is this the same person? People in the chat, is this the same person that shot the CEO of United Healthcare? And by the way, United Healthcare used to be a big sponsor of a professional cycling team. And so I'd be interested to see it. Garbage Main, 14th A, not even legally ratified. Let's talk about that if you want to. The Civil Rights Act of, what was it, 1965 came about, but since it was after the Civil War and with Reconstruction starting, they didn't even have the southern states in the Union, which means they didn't even vote on it. It goes past, but then they're like, okay, it's not actually valid because we didn't have these. They go to then ratify or vote on the 14th Amendment, and they actually ratify the 14th Amendment or go to vote on it. But one of the guys, it didn't pass, and one of the guys in there, then they're like, oh, and they kicked him out. They then kicked him out of Congress after he had voted no, and then they're like, oh, we'll just pretend that he's not there. We're not going to replace him. And then they ratified it with the votes that they had because they missed it by one vote when they kicked this guy out. And so it was crazy. And he'd been legally voted in. Look, the 14th Amendment, we just went through that with Trump, which was to keep a lot of the Southerners. These are all Republicans at the time, by the way. A lot of problems have happened because of the Republican government. But they wanted to keep the southern states, the rebels out there from coming back into Congress, coming back in the Senate and causing havoc. It is an interesting thing to think about too. I talked about this a little bit with Sean, potentially criminal, which is there. I'm trying to remember the case. It's a Texas case, which is it was during this whole time period, which because remember the government then during Reconstruction, they didn't actually admit these states were now like military outposts in a sense, right? They weren't actually part of the Union. Now, remember, Lincoln said, you don't have a right to leave the Union, so we're going to fuck you up and go to war. But then afterwards, they do have the right to kick you out of the Union, the several states. And it was a Supreme Court and ruling, and they said, yeah, it was actually, it's fine. So it's still valid law, which means now Brian McClanahan's out there going, why don't we kick out New York? Why don't we kick out California? Imagine this country without New York and California, how red it would be and unstoppable. And I'm like, you got a point. I would probably move at that point. This was, look at Biden here. This is a great picture of him. He's doing great. Is this the right person? Gunman hailed as hero. People, don't be stupid. Maybe I'll get some flack for this, but I'm not a big fan of where you're going to go shoot this guy out because he's the head of a CEO. And remember, the left will be crazy and they're like, yeah, you shouldn't, down with the health insurance companies. I'm like, they've been gaining a lot of power, but they gained a lot of power. Texas v. White, maybe that's what it was. They've been gaining a lot of power. The insurance companies from Obamacare and government monopoly intervention, allowing them to do what they want, right? So, who propped them up? Obama did. That was a definitely big up. We talked about that a while ago in the middle of the episode. Okay. What are you talking about? Did you talk about the trans kids, bad Supreme Court case? Yeah, I did, Kara. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you had mentioned specifically, Kara, about wanting me to do a project on that. I did walk through it a little bit. I'll just give a quick overview. We'll recap with this. 14th Amendment, 9th Amendment have a few things. 14th Amendment has an equal protection clause, has privileges or immunities within it, It has incorporated the Bill of Rights in it. All these are bad things. Then there's a thing called substantive due process, which is the 14th Amendment has a due process clause. Remember, the 5th Amendment is due process. You are subject to due process, but it's only for the federal governments. Then the 14th Amendment comes along and they say, hey, but the states have to give due process as well. Process is literally a process. You file a motion in court, you serve them, you get their chance to have, depositions, court case, confront your witnesses in court. That's the process that it goes through, and there's steps for that. Then the court says, hey, with this 9th Amendment, there's this whole issue of rights that aren't listed, unenumerated rights. Let's do substantive due process. You get due process for for rights that have not been enumerated, such as the right to family, right to marriage, or these other issues. So this case came about with the Supreme Court based on the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. And with the Equal Protection Clause, there's scrutiny that they have to, depending on what the issue is, they have different types of scrutiny. Heightened scrutiny, strict scrutiny, they call it, intermediate scrutiny, or rational basis. Just the court has to have a rational reason. The more difficult, the higher the scrutiny, the more difficult it is that the court, the legislatures, the law that's been passed is going to be actually upheld as constitutional. This case was done and through the appeals on rational basis, and so it passed quite easily. Supreme Court, the Solicitor General is coming back and saying, look, this should not be done under rational basis test. It should be done under intermediate scrutiny. Some of the judges argued under Loving v. Virginia, or Virginia v. Loving, which was interracial marriage, that should be the standard that we're looking at here, that we should be able to trans kids, young kids, because of the equal protection, the disparity between the two parties. You're treating not each party the same, and that it should at least have intermediate or heightened scrutiny. And then the issue of substantive due process was parents have parental rights, is a fundamental right, and you should be able to make decisions based on overriding the government's laws. And that's a strict, heightened scrutiny itself to be able to do with the fundamental right. So should parents that want to trans their kids be able to bypass this law and do it anyway? That's at issue. The other issue is equal protection. Are they, because they're transing, and girls' medical treatment is different than boys? Are you treating them all the same? There's a lot of confusion. I really believe, though, that the men and Amy Coney Barrett are going to prevail in this one and come about. So there you go. That's kind of the recap. Carrie, I hope you got that. So when do we get the ruling on the Tennessee case? Probably midsummer. What'd it do, JC? So many base conservatives have the moral compass of Walter White. Yes, I don't know what that is a reference to. Anyway, I appreciate you all joining in here. I am going to shut this thing down. And what I'm going to do, by the way, everyone congratulates, except for the harming them. Ugh. Yeah, okay. Everyone can go thank you. Everyone go and congratulate Andy. He's got a new baby. He got a new house. He's becoming a full-on adult. I think he even went into Home Depot. Congrats to him. Everyone have prayers out there for me, because I'm going to go downstairs now, pull up flooring that I just put in. These baseboards, I just put these wonderful baseboards. I ripped them out. I'm going to pull this flooring up and make sure that the moisture is not spreading, because we got flooded. And then new washer and dryer coming soon too. And I have to get the floors back down for them. So congrats, Angeli. Daniel Penny case. I already said, I don't think there's a result on it. Let's see. Daniel, I don't live in New York. Penny case. Let's see if there's any news on it. News. Penny trial. Jury begins deliberations. Jury set to weigh Penny's fate. Jury deliberations. And it's not public, so I don't really know what's going on there, Andy. So it's really hard to say. But anyway, there you go. Then we want to go out on that. Let's go out on... do this one. Okay, so let's recap. Nick Fuentes, battery. He should do a plea. I didn't know the lady broke her ribs. I imagine you could get medical evidence for that. Nick Rekieta, we're still waiting on his whole situation. Who knows what's going to be happening with that? But it's exciting to find out, right? Barnes and Viva Fry. I found a Viva Fry the other day. He's like online, and it's like a update on Rekieta. And I'm like, sweet, let's see what he had. No, he had reposted audio onto YouTube from when he first did it. So he's still full of shit, I'm sure. Nick Fuentes, we already said he's been arrested. We recapped the Supreme Court issue. We're going to be delving into more of those kind of cases. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good time, and we will see you next week, everybody. Thank you. Goodbye. Hasta la vista. Hasta luego. Hasta mañana. Bye-bye.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder, for others, in other cases, whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you. You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you. That was,